Welcome to the Soul Seeker podcast. I'm your host, Sam Kabert. I started this pod back in 2019 when I was taking my first steps on the path of remembering. And at the time, the tagline for the show was a journey of self-discovery. A year later, it became a journey of remembering. Yet, what I know now is back then I was still seeking. And what I've come to know now is that it's the journey of seeking that brings us the silent, slow stillness of acceptance. And therein lies our own innate wisdom. It's my mission now to eradicate the glorification of hustle culture, as it was my drive in entrepreneurship that led to a greater whole, and that's because I was outsourcing my sovereignty rather than looking within. So let this be your invitation to take a deep breath in and remember that at any time we can shift our thoughts and our feelings to create the outer world in which we wish to live. Soul Seekers, it's time to grow. Let's go. What is up, and welcome back to another episode of the Soul Seeker podcast. I am your host, as always, Sam Kabert, and in this episode, I'm sitting down with Carissa Johnsen. Now, Carissa's story is incredible. You know, I relate to so many different things that she shared, kind of like growing up and shutting down your gifts, working with, battling through, however you want frame it, but depression, you know, and overcoming that, and kind of throughout your life, knowing there's something there, and then building a business, and then having those gifts come up again. So Carissa is a success oracle. She's a multi-dimensional channel. She's an intuitive prosperity coach, and she's frankly just an amazing human. So I'm stoked for you guys to get to know her. She's recently teamed up with Gaia TV, which is awesome. She takes the stage to share her message and to help humanity rise above this fallen state, to raise the consciousness, which is my goal here with the Soul Seeker podcast. And I used to say this all the time, you know, this podcast, this is something I do from my heart, and it's something that I do as my way to give back and help raise the collective consciousness from this fallen state. And what's cool about this episode is I feel like in the past year or so in the Soul Seeker podcast, I haven't talked as much about aliens, UFOs, or the meaning of existence. And we got into some of those chats also with a lot of grounded stuff as well. So you're going to learn from Carissa on some awesome ways to develop your intuition, which comes later in the show. So make sure to stick to the very end. And of course, if you're new to the Soul Seeker podcast, please consider subscribing, rating, and reviewing. It just helps the algorithm. So basically, if you're down with raising the collective consciousness from this fallen state, which I would imagine you would be if you're listening to this, the easiest and most free, because it is free, way to give back to the show is simply by leaving a review. It's an algorithm thing. It helps other people discover the podcast as well. So thank you so much. I hope you enjoy this episode with Carissa Johnsen. All right, here we are again for another episode of the Soul Seeker podcast with Carissa Johnsen. Now, before we get started, as always, we're going to drop in with some breath. So for those of you listening, I encourage you to breathe with us. But if you're driving or doing anything else where you can't close your eyes, just focus on your breath. You don't need to close your eyes to get the full benefit of this. So Carissa, for you, for myself, and those of you listening that are in a space to close down your eyes, I invite you to just shift from that chaotic outer world and just slowly coming into your inner landscape. And if you're sitting down, sitting straight up, feeling your feet on the floor, and through the nose, inhaling up as you let the belly expand and bring that breath all the way up. Sipping in a bit more air at the top. Audible sigh, exhale, let it go, let it go, let it go. And another big and slow inhale all the way up through the nose. Sipping in a bit more air at the top. Pausing here, rolling up the eyes. An audible sigh, let it go, let it go, let it go. And last one, big inhale all the way up. Sipping in a bit more air at top. Rolling up the eyes. And exhale, let it go.
Oh,
Letting the breath return to the natural state and rhythm. Just flickering the eyes open when you're ready. All right, here
that
we
felt
are.
really
Here we are.
nice. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, I really needed that.
Right? Yeah, and you do all the things. So yeah, thank you for engaging with that. I appreciate it, Carissa. I find it's a good way to kind of drop in with these podcasts and these shows. So thank you for being here. You and I met through Fit for Service some years ago, and I don't know that we actually like had a proper drop in.
I totally was thinking about that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm stoked to do it through the podcast. So I've been watching you from afar on social media, seeing you crush all the different speaking stages, going on tour with Think and Grow Rich, that tour, and being affiliated with Gaia and your channeling and all the things. So I am so stoked to have you here. For anyone that's like just coming across you now, like how would you introduce yourself to them?
So it's so interesting, and I believe in transparency in leadership and in this industry. So I'm going to be real truthful. And I just sent you an updated bio and title this morning because I'm constantly evolving, and I think that that's something that we get to allow ourselves to be seen in is that sacred evolution. You know, life force energy wants to continue to expand, and it's expanding through us. So I find that I'm the master of identity shifts and reinvention. And right now, what's feeling really true for me is really bridging not only ancient wisdom and modern day living, but also profession or personal development and spiritual development, like the mystical and the practical. So my title right now is I'm a success oracle, a multidimensional channel, and an intuitive prosperity mentor. All of these things to say that I really love supporting people in connecting deeply with their divinity and their power and bringing forth that ancient wisdom that exists within all of us into all of our creations. So, our relationships, our work life, our the way that we show up in the world. So, it's really just about remembering that, you know, for me in my journey, which I'm sure I'll get into, healing is not the goal, right? Like we can get caught up in like healing and the healer's trap. And for me, I was caught up in a lot of that when I was doing like shamanic practitioner work. And this evolution for me that I'm in right now, which I've always sort of been in, but kind of been behind the scenes with it, is that we get to have the courage to be a work in progress and a masterpiece in progress and still show up for our life, for our leadership, for our legacy, for our relationships, knowing and remembering deeply on a cellular level that we are always going to be evolving, transitioning, and what I like to believe a masterpiece in process.
I love that. I love that so much. I resonate with so many things that you hit on. And my message is of soul life balance rather than work life balance. And it's really um, it's really similar to what you're talking about, like this transition of personal development into spiritual development. And that's something that doesn't get talked about enough, soul or spiritual development. And there definitely has been a big movement there. Now, I'd love to get into your journey. Like you seem like someone who was in a more executive businessy type of role and then went into spirituality, but I don't know if that's true. Could you tell us a little bit about your journey?
Sure. Long story short, you know, I grew up with a lot of psychic abilities that I repressed, as many of us do, because we all have these abilities. And I sort of fit into the camp of being very ambitious, very powerful, very outgoing. I built a very successful business from the ground up in my mid to later 20s, built a multiple six-figure business, then to near seven-figure business, and was in that space. And then, you know, a lot of these abilities came online when I was in the peak of my career, and which
Mhm.
became very disorienting. And simultaneously, a lot of my trauma came up. So so I was experiencing this multidimensional reality without all of the tools around how to actually navigate that terrain. Because my background is in clinical psychology, so I was a counselor for many years, and I'm skipping over so much just to kind of keep it brief, but we can dive into any of this. And so when a lot of these abilities came online, I had the mindset tools, but I didn't have the spiritual awareness of the spiritual realm and dimensions and different aspects of our psyche and parts and our multidimensional expression. And all of this really came online very quickly for me. So I've weaved, I started very young in spirituality, then, sort of masked that part of me out of fear of being weird and being unusual and not being liked. And then so I became very ambitious, built a very successful company, had a lot of team members, and did that and it stepped into that CEO energy. And then as these gifts came online, it was like, oh wow, there's these other aspects of life. So I weave, and I think a lot of us do. And so now I get to bridge both of it. And that's the sort of shamanic initiation we all go through, right? The hero's journey of the path that we walk is ultimately the path that we get to show other people's how to walk, how to walk. So I like to bridge all of it. So it's been a weave, and now it's perfect for me to be a CEO and to be a master of my reality and to understand the psychological, the personal aspects, but to really understand the territory of the spiritual, how to connect to soul guidance, how to channel interdimensional energy and actually bring it forward into the world. And so it's been a journey. It's one that keeps evolving, and I constantly question like, but I like these things. Like these things are very business oriented and very material focused, although they're not superficial. And then there's these other parts of me that's like, forget everything. I just want to learn esoteric wisdom and be in a cave and speak light language. So there's all of it. And so yeah, it's been a journey and I keep walking it.
Yeah, I love that. And I can relate to that. Different for me, but similar in the aspect of shutting it down from a young age. It's interesting. You probably know Mary Margrave, I'd imagine. She's a
I don't know Mary Margrave. Mm-mm.
she's a channeler, she's legit, and I work with a lot of different ones, or I have. And one of the things that I thought was funny that Mary channeled when I first had a call with her like 4 years ago or something was like, you didn't tell me you had all this activity with UFO and aliens when you were a kid, and I'm like. Well, remember I told you I don't remember anything about my childhood? I have a lot of memories or
Chills.
stories. What's that?
I said I just got the chills. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, well, it's fascinating, and I'm sure we could speak on this a little bit too, but and I think I saw some things you've put out online about which resonate with patience, right? And kind of when you have that energy of wanting that thing, you're almost pushing it away, if you will. Because what I'm getting at here is even still to this day, I still haven't unlocked a lot of those memories, surprisingly enough. But this kind of goes to one of the things that we were speaking about through text, email, whatever you want to say. This shows evolution of going from a journey of self-discovery, like soul seeking, like seeking, I'm pushing, right? And then remembering it's like this softening. It's like, oh, wow. And then acceptance being like, and can I just accept that? You
Hmm.
know? So I just put a lot on the table. Curious if there's any threads you want to pull at
So
there.
many threads. Okay, let's start with the UFO thing. And I these are topics that I still have yet to fully share about on social media. And so this feels like a good opportunity to start to talk about some
Cool.
of this stuff. Because similarly, I didn't remember a lot of my childhood. And as a lot of my spiritual gifts were waking up, all my trauma from repressed childhood was also waking up. I had experienced sexual trauma as a child that I had repressed. And interwoven in that were a lot of interdimensional experiences that I had with extraterrestrials also. So you could imagine that when all this was coming online, how disorienting a lot of that was. And I'm still integrating those experiences. I'm still remembering a lot of that. And I feel that that's part of what many people are waking up to right now is not only that they identify maybe as being a star seed, so an individual from another, galaxy or another lineage of star civilization that was planted here specifically for a sacred mission to help anchor and hold a frequency of light to help humanity raise their consciousness and awaken. So people identify as being a starseed, but also people have had many UFO experiences. And I mean, right now we're in a time period where there's UFOs all across New Jersey, among many other places right now. There's also plasma energy. There's also these drones that we firmly believe that are not governmental agency or drones because they're saying that they don't actually know where they are, whose they are. So a lot of this stuff is happening right now for us all to remember our intergalactic cellular origins, right? Not only do we all have ancient DNA that is extraterrestrial, and we're all sort of, star beings or star seeds or hybrids on some capacity, and that's a whole nother conversation. But we all believe, we are realizing that there's so much more to this human existence than what we've been told. And the challenge with that is once you touch that paradigm of reality, there's no going back. And
Yeah.
once you start to access that level of awareness, that's truly when a lot of your gifts start to come online. Because the gifts don't necessarily, I mean, they need to be developed in their own form or fashion, but ultimately it's healing ourselves from all the programs and the distortion that actually gives us access to what is our birthright of these psychic abilities. So all that to say, I went through so many awakenings around this and still do, of, challenging hidden history and ancient wisdom around, Jesus and Mary Magdalene and all of like that wisdom. And then also, how does this tie in with extraterrestrials? And how does this tie in with our awakening and humanity and health? It's like when you actually sit and comprehend the awakening that we're in right now, it is absolutely unfathomable. In some ways, it goes so beyond the mind. So yeah, I had many awakenings and I'm still having it. And in order for us to fully awaken to our gifts and to connect with these ancient civilizations that are here to support us in our evolution, we have to do things like breath work. We have to do things like manage our nervous system and our capacity. We have to, and I say have to loosely, like it's our sovereign choice, but that's what's going to give us the greatest ability to actually transcend into this new earth, into this golden age, into our actual potential that is so unfathomable. It's actually beyond our what our mind can comprehend. I mean, I think about Richard Rudd and his story about the dragonfly, right? And how this dragonfly, what it is before it's like a water creature, and then it turns into this other creature, and then it goes into this chrysalis, and then it, deconstructs, and it's like the butterfly, but it's a whole nother being on the other side. And that's what we're going to be transitioning into in these next couple of years. So I know I touched on a lot there, but I think that this
Yeah.
conversation is so interesting because many people don't want to talk about it, but I think we get to explore this with an open mind, and also not knowing, we don't have all of the answers right now. They're still very much unraveling.
Yeah, thank you for all that. There's a lot there, and it is interesting how you mentioned like many people don't want to talk about this or admit it's happening or any of those things. And I mean, from where I'm sitting, at least, like the conversation around psychedelics and plant and earth medicines alone, the way that has flipped on its head over the past couple of years is just wild. People just seem so much more open to plant and earth medicines and psychedelics. And at least for me, with like the UFO stuff happening in New Jersey or any of the things that you mentioned having to do with extraterrestrials. What's the new word for UFO? It's UAP or
UAP.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, like it's funny. I'll get texts from like my friends. Either they're into spiritual stuff or they're not, but they know like I went through this really like deep phase of like being into aliens and all that, and kind of on the other side of that now. And they're like, I thought you were into this, and I'm like, yeah, but I mean, like it's different now because I know, like, if that was here in my town, I'd be stoked. But it's like, oh, that's cool. Yeah, of course that's happening. Or have you heard of the podcast telepathy tapes?
Somebody just told me about that the other day.
Yeah, it's a podcast that my friends told me about a few weeks ago, and then synchronicities, reticular activating system, is that what it is? Yeah,
Yeah.
any of those things. Of course, now it's coming into our awareness more and more, right? Because we saw it once, because I've been seeing it pop up, and I tried to listen to this podcast, which is so well done. It's like one of those NPR type podcasts where they do little bits and then they tell you the backstory. It's like highly edited, you know, it's cool. But same thing, I couldn't get into it because it was all about these cases of like telepathy. And I'm like, yeah, no, I believe in that. And Dolores Cannon talks about like, you know, people with autism, how they come to Earth on a higher frequency. And then Bashar talks about how like, you know, telepathy is actually being on that same frequency with someone. So to just listen to a podcast trying to convince you that telepathy is real, it's like, you know, I couldn't really get into it, you know? But it is interesting to see the narrative changing and what people are getting into, and even, you know, what was that movie that came out a couple of years ago, Everything Everywhere All at Once, that won an Oscar, you know, and it's just opening people up. So it does seem like, to me at least, people are starting to be a little bit more open to this, you know, don't you think?
100%. The more conversations that I'm having like this, the more I'm realizing that everyone is awakening. We are not immune to the shift in frequency in humanity right now. And it's exciting. It's exciting for me because I think many of us have been exploring these topics and having these secret and private conversations about it. And the more that we can open it up, the more that we can normalize, the more we can actually shift our consciousness around it, the more we can actually be in right way with earth, with these beings, with other aspects of our psyche, with the truth of reality and what it means to actually be a sovereign human being on this planet right now. They're all interconnected. These things are not different, you know, talking with a lot of people at Gaia in particular, there's conversations around like, how does yoga and extraterrestrials fit? And it's like, how does it not? We're all a part of
Yeah.
the same construct and reality. And I think we've tried to, similar to what the medical system does the human body, where we try to isolate different things and don't look at it as a whole system, we're missing the picture. You know, so when we're like, oh, let's, you know, let's work on this organ here that's inflamed versus like what's happening with the whole body, I think that that's what's happening with humanity right now. There's major symptom management that we've been doing with weather, with our health system, with food, with our bodies, things like that, versus looking at the whole picture of reality and what is the information and the wisdom that we're missing? What are the things that we're denying? And as we look at it with a new perspective and a shift of this whole ecosystem that works together, like when we see the earth and, you know, how I don't, this is a whole separate topic, but in a way, you know, what's happening with the weather, I think in some ways is distortion. I think some ways is really real. Like, you know, the ocean is suffering with plastics and things like that. But the way that we treat our mother, Mama Gaia, Pachamama, is also a reflection of the way that we treat ourselves, the way that we treat each other. So as within, so without, all of this information is simultaneously connected. Like that's hermetics, you know? So I think it's important that we look at the whole construct of reality and the paradigm that we live in, and not to isolate or dismantle certain things and segment them and look at these topics separately. It's like it's all interconnected, and it's only a matter of time before we can look at a lot of these topics and it makes sense because we're in the midst of it right now, you know, but in
Yeah.
hindsight, a lot of these pieces will come together. A lot of this ancient esoteric wisdom around Atlantis and Lemuria are coming to light right now. And so as we understand our past more and that ancient wisdom that has been stored in caves, you know, encoded in rocks and in pyramids, we're going to be able to understand more clearly the time period that we're in right now and the significance of it because we are in a major crossroads. Are we going to sink or are we going to swim? And I personally, the messages that I receive from my guides is we've crossed the threshold. We're going to get to the other side, but it's just how long it's going to take and how we're going to get there and how much we fight and struggle with each other on our way there. So the journey has yet to reveal itself, but I feel firmly about the frequencies that we've already shifted. We've crossed the threshold. We're going to land on the other side. It's just going to be a matter of how we get there.
Yeah, that resonates deeply. And what's coming up for me, I got like a little visual of Charlton Heston as Moses in the Ten Commandments, and you know I'm Jewish, so that's my filter of the world. But it reminds me of like the story of Passover and the plagues, and like a lot of what has been happening. To your point, whether it's manufactured by humans or it's manufactured by humans unconsciously, because either way kind of
Right.
is right. Yeah, that I think about it. But yeah, it's like the plagues, kind of this apocalyptic world that we're living in. And this is being recorded, by the way, everyone, like a week and a half, 2 weeks or something, 2 weeks after the LA fires. And for me, those hit close to home, even though I'm 6 hours north. I have family and friends down there and go down there often for medicine ceremonies. And it's just it's different when it kind of hits you that way, sometimes. But just grounding for a moment, I want to stay with the esoteric stuff. I want to learn more about what you got going on, Guy. I tell everyone to check out Guy if they're not already checking it out. Talk about sacred success. But before we get into all that, just grounding and like taking care of our vessels and taking care of our bodies. For me, one of the things that has been so helpful is nootropics. And there's this tiny little performance shot. It's like a mental performance shot. You've heard of it, Magic Mind.
Yeah, oh, totally. I've used it. I love it.
It's so good. Yeah, it's great for cognition, energy, less stress. Tell me a little bit about how Magic Mind worked for you.
I don't drink coffee.
Yeah.
So for me, I really had a difficult time finding something that felt pure, felt like it was going to carry medicine that actually amplified my energy versus just made me hyperactive because my system is super sensitive. Being an empath and really doing a lot of healing work to raise my frequency, for me, I've needed to, and I choose to, and I love that I get to take care of my body with extra mindfulness. So, no seed oils, eating all organic, all of that. And so finding a product that I felt like cared about the ingredients that was going to work simultaneously together and with my system in a way that wouldn't create jitteriness, but would create focus so that I could bring forth my mission, my contribution to the world was difficult until I found Mind Magic. And so I really appreciate this product. I'm not a part of this sponsorship here, but I love this product and I think they're incredible. And my experience with them is that they're an awesome brand that really cares about this temple. That kind of goes back to the esoteric wisdom we're talking about, like this
Yeah.
temple. So I fully support it, and it's been a beautiful experience for me too.
Oh, I love that. Did you know that they came out with a sleep version now?
Oh no, I didn't know that.
It's new and it's really cool. Have you ever tried Valerian straight up? And I'm not talking about Game of Thrones like Valerian steel, like Valerian
Yes.
root.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it smells like feet.
you knew exactly where I was going with that. Yeah, you take valerian raw. I mean, my parents were here the other night, and I had some valerian, and we had 4 dogs in my tiny little home, and they're like, "Did one of the dogs puke?" And I'm like, "No, that's my tea." But anyways, in Magic Mind's new sleep formula, they have kava, they have GABA, they have 5-HTP, and they have valerian, and it actually tastes good and doesn't smell bad. And again, it's this tiny little performance shot, so it's easy to take right before bed. So if anyone listening wants to check out Magic Mind, go to the show notes. You can find the link for 48% off for your first subscription and using code SAMSoulSeeker20, SAMSoulSeeker20, and that's all in the show notes. Cool. So let's get back into Gaia. Like, tell us a little bit about how you got involved with Gaia Network. That's cool.
I didn't get into this with my journey because it's such a long story, but I could share a little bit of it. But several years ago, when I was awakening to my spiritual abilities and when all this trauma was coming up, it was incredibly disorienting for me. And I found it very challenging to function in my business with clients, with masterminds, with international retreats, books, like all the things that I was doing at the time. I found it difficult to really navigate all the complexities of life, and I didn't know where to turn. And Gaia was one of the platforms that really supported me in educating me on this wisdom that it's sometimes really hard to find. Now it's a little bit more open on YouTube and whatnot, but years ago when I was going through this, it wasn't as popular or as well known as it is now. And as I was tapping into that platform, I had a spiritual awakening watching one of the shows called
Oh, wow.
Transcendence. And I even recorded it because it was so profound. I was having this vision that I was going to work with Gaia and that I was going to have I won't spoil it because like actually some things are in the works right now, but I had this vision that I was going to work with them in a very big way. And over the course of several years to this moment, there have been multiple synchronicities that have led me to Gaia. From having that initial vision to feeling called to move to Boulder, Colorado without having any level of awareness that they were here, their headquarters are here. And I really didn't know anyone here, to being told by my guides to prepare a pitch deck for them to pitch them. And I'm like, going through this disorienting process, like, what am I going to pitch them on? And my guides were like, pitch them something. I'm like, whatever. So I didn't listen to that. And then, after that, meeting a stranger on social media who then introduced me to the CEO of Gaia, who became a friend. And then I was getting visions in the middle of the night about things that they were working on and should be doing. And so then I
Wow.
told him, and he's like, wow, you should come work with us. And so there's been so many things that have happened over the course of the last 4 or 5 years. Gaia has been in my field, and I feel truly deeply and so passionately that this company, this organization is really blazing the trail on really moving humanity forward in this evolution. And, it's been my soul. My soul has guided me along this journey. That's the kind of life that I live right now. I listen to my soul. I check in with my intuition. I ask for guidance from my guides, from angels, from God, creator. Like, all of this wisdom that I get to have support me on this journey has been absolutely so life-changing and transforming. So that was, the journey has been evolving over years. I've been getting messages to get involved with them, pitch them things, and now I'm working with the organization and just seeing how they work, just seeing the things that they're working on, just supporting them with hosting events and just everything. It's really humbled me in a way of seeing people so devoted to the mission, to the purpose, to humanity's evolution, that it's been deeply inspiring and activating for me. And so that's been a little bit about the journey coming here. And it's just been an amplifier for me. When you go into the headquarters and you're around all these crystals and all these high frequency people, and you're talking about yoga and yogic philosophy, you're talking about extraterrestrials, you're talking about psychic abilities, you're talking about your body and health and wisdom. It's like got all of it. It really does something to you. And I feel like it's been such an amplifier. It's been a humbling experience. I feel really deep in resonance with what they're doing, and so privileged that I get to support the company and get to, be on this journey with all these amazing people.
Yeah, I can imagine it. Kind of takes me back to my fit for service days and being surrounded people, not in a work capacity, but the classic quote, "You're the average of the five people you hang out with most." So that's absolutely incredible. I want to get to intuition and listening to your soul and how people can connect with that. But before I do, since this is kind of top of mind with what you just mentioned, like being in that environment of Gaia and all those leaders and everyone kind of on the same page, I think a lot of people listening to this podcast or a podcast like this are looking for resources to help them on their spiritual awakening feel alone, whether it's with their friends, their family, or their workplace, and they don't have that type of community and support. And I would imagine that was probably part of your journey. That was a big part of my journey as well. What would you say to those people that are like, oh, I'm not saying they're like, oh, must be nice, but they don't necessarily have the support around them, how they can get more support around them?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, I totally resonate with that experience. That was my entire life journey. Growing up as a very anxious and depressed child, going through a lot of substance use challenges, growing up with a single parent, having sexual abuse come up for me, having a lot of psychic abilities and empathic abilities, and feeling like I didn't understand this paradigm of reality and why people did the things that the way that they'd done or do and did and have done. I always felt like I'd never fit in. No matter what energy, no matter what crowd, no matter what I was doing, it always felt like, where are my people? And this was a deep yearning. This is my deepest core wound, was feeling like I never belonged. And so I would contort myself. I would mold myself to be someone who could fit into every room. And there's a beautiful quality of that, of like, I could get along with anybody. But there was also an inauthentic aspect of that where I was hiding my true self to fit into a room with people because I wanted to be loved. I wanted to belong. It's part of the reason why I built a very successful company very quickly, because there were parts of me that put on the show. Not that I wasn't, I didn't I loved my clients. I was there for the work. I loved serving people, but the image that I put out was so polished and so professional. And I still, some of it's art, but there was a distortion behind that, you know? So a lot of the things that I did were to achieve, to get love. And I know that many, you know, many people that I work with, many people I'm surrounded with have that same sort of energy and frequency and that same, you know, similar life path. So it actually wasn't until a couple of years ago that I felt like I had community. I felt the need and necessity because I was afraid of intimacy. I was afraid if you get too close to me, I can't trust you because of my childhood. So it took me years of leaning into community and connection and then getting the major contraction and then people holding me and seeing me. And, you know, I will say that it does require that you trust and you put yourself out there. And there's going to be people who can't actually hold you. There's going to be people who do judge you. Even in spiritual communities that we want to believe are fully enlightened, we're all inherently flawed human beings. And so there's still distortions, there's still protectors, there's still parts, there's still things that happen, but you can do it in a place where people all value the same thing. They're all committed to clear and vulnerable communication. They're committed to your nervous system. They're committed to your healing. They're committed to being in right way and connection. Even if we're not best friends, we can be in connection and in community, right? So I would say that for a fit for service was actually my first community that I had allowed myself to be in because I had been such a lone wolf for an incredibly long period of time. And that was edgy. And I connected with people there, and there were a couple people that I went really deep with. And then I wasn't in that community anymore. So I weaved, you know, I moved to Boulder. I met some people here. The Gaia community was and is one of the main communities to me that I feel deep resonance with because we all have the same values. We're all part of the same mission. We're all doing showing up and doing the work. But that's not to say that that everyone is my best friend. So what I would say is that it's all of life is happening for you. And the true initiate path is to recognize where your core wounding is and where there is stories that get to be liberated because my fear around intimacy, my fear around connection was this belief system that, you know, there was a little victim mentality, right? I can't trust you or you did this to me. And it was it was my younger child and my younger parts that wanted to be make sure that you were okay. And as soon as I recognized and realized this really empowering belief that there's no villain and there's no savior in any story. There's just me. And there's no one who's going to make me. There's no one who's going to break me. There's just the journey. And we are all weaving. We are all on our path, doing the best that we can in the best way that we can. And so, you know, when I first started to get involved in communities, I would research Meetup and I would just go to networking events and I would have conversations with people and I would put myself out there. And then there'd be a rupture and it'd be like, ow, that hurt, you know, and then I would lean in and I would do the process and I would utilize my tools. And so all rupture happens so that there can be repair, so that there can be greater healing. We have to choose to see it that way. And as soon as I realized that there's going to be no perfection with any community, that it's up to me to be a sovereign being and put myself out there, and that life is continuously happening for me, community became really easy, much more easy for me. And even though Gaia is like my people and I live in Boulder, I have a great community here, there are people everywhere that I connect with. And so I feel like sometimes we think that the community has to be the people closest to us in proximity physically. It's just the people closest to us proximity energetically and spiritually. So I have great friends in Miami, I have friends in Costa Rica, I have friends all over. And so allowing yourself to really be in the dance and the play with the exploration and the curiosity of who am I? Because that's first and foremost. If you want to find your community, it's really important that you ask yourself and to know thyself so that you have a greater awareness with the kind of people you want to be around. Because if you're not in that initial self-discovery of who you are, you don't know who you want to be around, and you might try to put yourself in groups and circles that you actually don't resonate with, but you think are quote unquote cool or because these people are doing well on social media or whatever. But it's an exploration. So stay curious, stay open, keep leaning in, and utilize the tools and surround yourself with people who are who are flawed and human, but are just devoted to the work. And you will be pleasantly surprised that that deep, intimate relationships can come from that.
Have you ever felt overwhelmed by emotions and unsure how to move through them? Sam created the Breath Club to help you find calm and clarity. In this free online community, Sam teaches how to regulate your nervous system through breath work and process emotions effectively. Did you know that most emotions only last 90 seconds when you fully allow yourself to feel them? This is called the 90-second rule, and it's a powerful tool backed by science for emotional healing. Each week, Sam hosts live calls to guide breathwork practices and create real connection. You'll also get access to an online course and pre-recorded breathwork videos. The link to join is in the show notes.
So well said. So well said. Thank you for that and sharing some of your vulnerabilities there as well. I'll add, you mentioned like sitting with this question of who am I? And I think that's such a good prompt. And for me, one of the ways I will kind of play with the matrix from time to time, whether I'm feeling lonely or I need some magic in my life, whatever it might be, is just looking at other people as a mirror myself. And especially when I get triggered, being like, okay, what's coming up in me? And that is directly related to that question of who am I? And that's an embodiment practice, and when we start to shift like that, other people start to notice as well. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I also wanted to say one thing too. I have a code for a 7-day free trial too if people want
Oh,
to connect with Gaia community. So I'll share that with you and you can link that in the show notes for people who want to get involved because truly Gaia is up to some really incredible stuff and so much of it has to do with community this next couple of years. And
ooh,
just to kind of highlight what you're saying too, knowing thyself is such is the re like I think we all get kind of caught up in like what's my purpose? I'm here for a big thing and we all have a divine assignment, but ultimately it is to know thyself and to discover this being, this soul and your evolution and to just walk your path. And I find that to be my greatest study, right? I get so caught up sometimes in like, oh, I want to study psychedelics or shamanism or,
yeah.
this esoteric wisdom or this thing or breath work. And then I'm like, I'm the study. I am the
Mm,
study. I am the masterpiece. I am my greatest guru. And that goes back to like your intuition and not pedestalizing people and looking to outsource your power, even to coaches or even to spiritual figures or leaders. Like that paradigm really is crumbling. And I think that's kind of like the Christ consciousness that's awakening within us is that we have this beautiful, unconditional, loving energy within us that we are looking for other people to provide, right? As soon as I
yeah.
started doing a lot of parts work, I recognized that the inner child wasn't looking for my mom to be different. It was looking for me to reparent and show up as the mother that I needed, right?
Mm,
So as I can show up as that parent for myself, as I can show up as the wise woman that I get to channel, that is me, as I show up for the masculine energy and I nurture my inner feminine, I have this inner divine union that awakens and we have that level of wholeness. And when we embody that level of wholeness, that's when potential is truly possible. That's when we're really just beginning to touch what is our birthright and our codes and our activations come online. So that's part of the dance that's happening is we're not just awakening to this external reality. We're waking up to the universe that exists within us and all the parts and our aspects that exist within us and all these multi-dimensional pieces, all these past life things that are actually happening simultaneously. It's not linear in time. It's all happening right now.
oh, I love that. I love that. And this is the funny thing too about having my show a little bit shorter these days because I'm like, oh, I could keep going on the esoteric stuff. And I'm like, all right, 50 minutes, Sam, get it together. But I could sit here all day, talk about, time and parallel lives and all of the things. So let's talk about intuition because this has been coming up a lot in this conversation. And I feel like I'm a pretty intuitive person. A lot of times I'll find myself gaslighting myself and practicing recognizing when that self gaslighting is coming up is a really good practice for me. And it's helped a lot of my clients. One thing that I know for me, I could improve on, and I would imagine a lot of people listening to this podcast is as well, would be like more connecting to their higher self or the wisdom from the soul. Like intuition builds towards that, but I'm not the teacher here, so I'd love to hear from you.
Totally. So this can be described in so many different ways, and I think it's all pointing to the same thing, right? And I walked very similar path where I always kind of knew information that I just thought that everyone knew. I was like, oh yeah, like that thing over there. And like, wait, that's not textbook. Even when I was a counselor for many years, I would counsel in a way where people would ask me like, how did you know that? And I just thought, oh, this is just the way that we all know information. So we all have gifts and abilities. These are very normal. I feel particularly something that you're mentioning is that there's been a hyperfixation on mental, that we have lived in a paradigm that has been supremely supported that aspect of our humanness, right? How intelligent we are, our rational mind, our logical mind, what makes sense. That is a very important part of being a human, but there's also this really beautiful right brain part of us that's creative, that's expressive, that's intuitive. And we're always experiencing multidimensional reality. We're intuiting information. I mean, are you familiar with heart math?
Yes, yeah, they're
So,
actually out here in Santa Cruz, but I haven't given them a visit yet.
oh, amazing. Well, heart math, many people know this, but it just highlights what I'm going to continue to share about intuition. Heart math did a study where they brought in a variety of different people and do I have time to share this? I want to make sure that we're
Yeah,
good on.
go for it. Yeah.
Okay, so Heart Math brought in a bunch of people for a study, and they all put them in front of a computer, and they were flashing different images, and then noting how their body physiologically responded to the images. So they would show them a flash of a person being angry, and then they would monitor their biofeedback, and then they would show them a picture of a sad person, and then witness the way that their body responded. And what they discovered was, beyond what they could even like comprehend in a way where they realized that people were physiologically responding to photos even before they showed up on the screen.
Wow.
So that indicates that we have precognition, we have awareness around things that are coming. I mean, if you even think about animals when they flee certain areas and then fires happen or storms come, like there's an energetic component to our human existence that we're just beginning to understand scientifically. I mean, the sages, the mystics all knew this, but we're just becoming aware of this. So we're constantly sensing information. And the heart for me is the wisdom keeper. And because we're such in a field that hyperfixates on mental faculties, we haven't been trained or learned how to access the wisdom of our soul, which I believe is in the heart, which is the bridge between worlds. So a lot of times when clients will come to me or people ask, how do I connect to my intuition? There's a variety of practices I'll say, and I can share a couple so people have, tools that they can use. But ultimately, it's about connecting to the heart's wisdom. It's about regulating your nervous system and being able to tap into your heart. And one of the simplest questions that I ask myself is, if my heart had a voice, what would it say?
Mm.
And that's such a profound and simple way to access your intuition. It's extraordinary. And so, for people who are like, oh, okay, but like I do it all the time and sometimes it leads me in the wrong direction. Okay, great. I get it. I hear you. So another practice that you can do is exactly how I tap into my intuition and how I tap into connecting with my soul, because truthfully, your soul is always giving you information. It's through songs on the radio, it's through feathers, it's through other people. I think we underestimate how God, how Source, how our soul speaks through other people and gives us the exact message that we need. So it's never that we're not connected, it's just that we're distracted. We're distracted on our phones, we're distracted with our mental chatter, we're distracted with worrying about things. So you'll notice that as you heal a lot of the stuff, they just naturally come alive. So one of the ways that I love teaching people how to connect with their higher self and their intuition is to stand up straight and to ask your body to show you, because your soul also communicates with you through your body. And that's, I think, the easiest way, because when people start to ask questions through their heart and tune into their psychic abilities, they can easily underrate that, and they can say, oh, I'm just making that up, right? So your body can have a physical representation almost as if a pendulum, which you can also do this with. So you can ask your body to show you what is a yes. And for some people, you might sway forward. Some people you might sway to the right. For me, I used to get a circle. I am clairvoyant, so I used to like see in my third eye like a circle to the right. And then ask your body to show you a no. And so for some people, you'll sway backwards. Some you even sways forward. Some you go to the left. Sometimes you see a color or an image. It reminds you of something, a song. So trust whatever information comes through and then play, like have fun with it. So
Yeah.
ask your soul, ask your higher self to help you pick out clothes in the morning. And then so stand at your closet and ask soul, show me what to choose. And then notice where your eyes go. Okay, maybe you naturally feel inclined to go to this side of the closet, and then hold something in your hand and then play. Is this, you would say, use a statement. So you would, instead of asking a question, you would say, this is the top I'm supposed to wear. And then you'll receive yes, no. So play around with it. Go to the grocery store, pick up a supplement, and ask your body to show you, I want this. And then it'll say yes, no. And as you move from yes, no, then you can ask and you track how you're being communicated with. Then you can ask different questions of, what is my highest purpose? What, am I meant to invest in this mentor? Am I meant to do this thing? And then you can do bigger decisions, but you're only going to be given the information that you actually begin to act upon. So I know some of us are in deep prayer of like, give me this, my full purpose, but we're not listening to the small nudges. So spirit always tells me, my soul always tells me that we need to trust the small micro moments in those decisions, and we build up our cultivation, we build up our confidence to trust ourselves in the larger things.
That's awesome. It's like a master class in like 5 minutes. So you guys might want to go back and hit rewind, screen record that, whatever you need to do, and put it on your Google Drive, share it with your friends and family. One of the things I wrote down was if my heart had a voice, what would it say? That was it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And that's one I'll be working with. And the pendulum one I should do. I've done that, and it would be a good time for me to revisit that.
If you're looking for a powerful and transformative experience for your next event, consider bringing in Sam Kabert as a keynote speaker. Sam's message of soul life balance and his expertise in mental health and mindfulness resonate deeply with audiences. He not only inspires with his story, but also offers practical tools like breathwork to help attendees regulate their emotions and reconnect with themselves. You can even have Sam lead a guided breathwork journey, creating a truly unforgettable experience. To learn more or book Sam for your event, check out the link in the show notes to book a call with Sam now.
So that's a really cool one too. And just learning to work with a pendulum period is really cool. I thought there was something wrong with me when I first started learning work with the pendulum. I was like, how come it's not moving? And it really taught me so much about slowing down, patience, getting in resonance with it, because I was so much in my head. So I think that can really teach people a lot too.
Yeah.
Carissa, yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say one more thing.
Yeah.
To remember that you are building a relationship. You are building a relationship with your soul. You're building a relationship with spirit, with God, your higher self. Like this is a relationship. And like any relationship, it needs time and attention. So, for me on Sundays, I block out time to actually connect with my higher self and ask the questions that I've been really going and contemplating, and write down the answers and then act on the wisdom. So just remember as we begin to close out here that this is a sacred relationship, one that you get to come into right way with, one that you get to nurture. And it's such an honor. And once you connect with a source of higher wisdom that is your higher self, that is your soul, your whole life changes. You feel that you're not alone. You can make decisions investing. You can do so many things differently with more support. It is the most valuable tool. And as all of these shifts happen in humanity, you filter everything through your body and your soul wisdom, and you're able to discern truth. With the shifts in AI and us not being able to tell what's real and what's not, your body is a lie detector, and it will be able to give you information and discern what's true and what's not. And so this is a real sacred and really important opportunity to build that relationship and to utilize what is so deeply in resonance for your life path.
All right, I have one more question since that popped up, and I did want to ask you this. So, I love the analogy as like a relationship. I was working with a client earlier today that is diving straight into all the work, the medicines, the integration, all the things. And this person mentioned like that they just want to take a break, that they just need a pause. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, that's from my experience, that's completely normal in this process, especially when we go like that gung ho, sign up for all the courses, do all the things and all of that. And I love this philosophy of humaning, which the definition Celeste and I came up with, one of our fit for service friends here. Humaning, to temporarily disengage from your mindful and spiritual practices to just be a damn human, essentially, right? And I think we're the slippery slope of this, which is why I love the philosophy and mindset of soul life balance, because it's kind of like a teeter totter, right? It's not a perfect balance, but it's realizing like we're giving to both. We don't want to completely abandon our spiritual practices, because it's almost like abandoning that relationship. We don't want to take a break from that relationship. Like, what would you say is a better way to kind of slow things down if it's starting to be like, oh my God, the meditation, the breath work, or whatever the person's thing is, where they're starting to feel like they need to take a break? How would you go about that?
I think that everybody is on their soul journey and soul path. And if they feel the need to totally take a break, I trust that, because no matter what, there's going to be wisdom in that. Whether they totally abolish everything and they go on a different detour and then they end up somewhere they didn't think they were going to be and they're like moving through challenges, that's medicine. Everything is happening for us. And there have truthfully been times where I had the same contemplation and desire, where spirit told me, don't spend so much trying to be spiritual that you forget to enjoy being human. And
Yeah.
I have really been, I do come in and out where I'm like, wow, I'm literally waking up, journaling, meditation, breath work. I'm sitting in plant medicine ceremonies. I'm doing all of the work. And sometimes it loses its magic when you
Mhm.
are doing it as a way to like check boxes and do things rather than
Totally.
a relationship. And we grow so significantly that sometimes the things that we start doing aren't actually in resonance with us anymore, but we don't know why they're not feeling good for us. So I think it is good to take breaks from what we're doing. It is okay to have a pause. I mean, fundamentally what I've realized in my own path and with many of my friends and family and former clients, it's like sometimes we can do the practices because there's an inherent belief system that we're broken. And that if we
Mm.
don't do them, we're not going to grow. And if we don't grow, we're not going to belong. We're going to be behind. We're not going to reach our potential. So being mindful about the energy with which you're doing the thing matters so much. So, doing away with some of the practices and just kind of fucking off for a little bit and having fun
Yeah.
can actually help you revisit it with more sacredness, with more intentionality, with actually going, okay, my plate was clean. Now that I'm feeling in this energy, what do I actually want to bring in again? And you'll notice it might actually be different. So we're not broken. We're always evolving. We get to be human as much as we get to be soul-led and spiritual. And I feel that being re-engaged with the humaning part actually helps us deeply appreciate being on the spiritual path.
Totally. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. My thing was just sometimes I've experienced it myself and other people as well. We can take that too far. So
Oh,
I was just
totally. Yeah, you're right.
cognizant of that. But yeah, Carissa, we're gonna have to do a part two, a part three, all the things. This is a nice little intro, and thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show. And hope to have you on the podcast again soon.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's been a beautiful journey.
Yeah, guys, check out the show notes. You can find all the ways to get in touch with Carissa there. And she does do one-on-one type of work, channeling work, intuitive guidance, as well as the link for the Gaia trial as well. And I'm super stoked to hear what Gaia's got up their sleeves, and we'll be following along. So thanks so much.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode to the very end. I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation with Carissa. I will definitely have her on the podcast again if she's down, of course, because this conversation was a lot of fun. If you want to go deeper with Carissa, go to the show notes. You can find her Instagram there, and you can find her link to get a free trial to Gaia TV. And of course, if you want to go deeper with me, the easiest way to do so is to join my free online community called the Breath Club, where I teach nervous system regulation. And other than that, make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. And I will see you on the next episode of the Soul Seeker Podcast. Thank you so much for listening to the very end. I hope you dug this podcast just as much as I enjoyed it. If you got anything at all, please, if you could just do me a favor and leave a 5-star review wherever you listen to this podcast, it helps the show grow. So thank you for considering to leave a review. If you want to go deeper with Soltara or Elan, you can find the links to connect with them in the show notes. And if you want to work with me, the best way to work with me, the easiest way to work with me is the free way, and that's by joining the Breath Club. The link to the Breath Club is in the show notes. And also know that I'm available for one-on-one support, that is coaching and guidance, as well as keynotes and breathwork journeys for conferences and events. Thank you so much, and I will see you on the next episode of The Soul Seek.